students, this is Mrs. Lindstrom. In this video, I will be walking you through ways to take strong reading notes for religion class. This is an adaptation from the Cornell style method that will work specifically for our textbooks and the things we do in class. The reading note strategies that we're doing here today are not just for religion class. You can use these strategies to help you be successful in all of your classes. So I want you to think about ways that you can use these note-taking skills in your history class, in your English class, in your science, and even your math classes. The first step to taking awesome reading notes is simply preparing yourself to read. What this entails is getting access to one of the templates I have for you on my webpage that you can either download and use as a PDF within Notability or another note-taking software, or you can print them and handwrite on top of them. Now, this is the method that I prefer because I personally like to handwrite my notes versus using a digital software, but of course you do what is more comfortable for you. In the event of not having access to the template or the PDFs, what you can always use is just simply find a piece of notebook paper and you can mimic the template on your own. Okay, the second step where you head your notebook paper I know seems so basic, but at the end of the day, you will thank yourself, especially when you go back to study for the final, that you did a good job writing down what chapter this information came from and specifically what section this information came from, because you're not going to remember in 3 months from now exactly where everything was located in the book. So this will make you so happy when you go to study for the final that you did such a good job organizing your notes by sections. The third step to preparing to take awesome reading notes is simply skimming the reading. Now, this means that you're not actually going to read the section. You're going to just flip through every page of the section looking for what visual clues the textbook writers have given you to give you an idea of what you should really be paying attention to. So the section title, obviously, but then again, look for pictures and charts. Like, why is this guy important? Why would they want to put a picture of him in the textbook? Is it just aesthetics, or is there an actual reason why we've highlighted him? Another thing you're going to want to skim for is any bold words or different colored words. In the case of our ebook, they usually put the vocabulary in red, and then the hard copy it is in green. But notice that you're going to be looking for definitions that are either embedded in the text or maybe give you a link to the glossary. Okay, so that's another visual clue you're looking for before you actually read. Bullet points or charts are also good things to kind of look for. And then lastly, before I start reading, I always go back and take a look at, does the textbook give me either comprehension questions or review questions that I should be thinking about as I'm going? So I quickly read those review questions and then I get ready to actually start reading the text. Okay, now it's step 4. It's time to start reading and actually taking notes. So for starters, you're going to annotate the main points in the right-hand column of the template. Okay, so I have for you here a sample of some reading notes that I took. So visually, just take a look here. There's nothing here in this Q column. That is for later when we come back and ask questions of what we annotated. So you'll see here the main ideas column. I have everything neatly organized. You see that I leave spaces in between things? This is important for our eyes and our brains. Just visually, we need breaks to help us mentally organize the information. And this also gives me more space to come back and ask questions later if I need to. Okay. Another thing I want students to think about is this last point, using bullet lists and abbreviations for the information that you read. A lot of times kids get themselves into trouble because they're just annotating too much stuff. So keep things brief, as you'll see here that I've got a couple bullet points. These lists are very helpful. I'm not rewriting the whole textbook. I'm keeping the information that I've read short and sweet. So the next step, after you've done reading the section and you've taken your notes, you're going to go back and actually review them. This is an important step because it helps you catch things you may have missed, but it also is a great tool in class when your teacher goes over something and maybe you had a brain blip and didn't quite catch something that was important. You can now add that to your notes too. So what I also do is when I'm reviewing what it was that I annotated, I go back and check to see that were there any vocab words that I need to make stand out or pop. Now in my system, I do this sort of green thing where I change the color of the vocab words anyway. So I might not need to go back and highlight those to make them pop because I kind of inherently do that as I'm reading. But that's a good thing to think about. What do you need to do to make your notes pop more? There's also another reason why we do this second review of our notes after we take them, and that's because it's good for our brain to get another exposure to the information. So by the time you come into class, you will have already taken notes once, and then you're going to go back and visit them, and that's another exposure for twice. And then when you go into class and you meet with your teacher, there's a third time. So your brain is really getting a lot of time with this information, and that's just going to help you remember it even more. This next step is technically part of the review process from the last slide. So remember how before we left that Q column blank. Now is our chance to start using it. What we will use this Q column for is a place to ask questions that will elicit the information that we took over here in our main ideas column. So pretend like you're writing a test or a quiz. What question would you ask on a test or a quiz that would somehow give us the answers over here? Now, it's really important that you write these questions directly next to the information in the main ideas column. Otherwise, you won't be able to find it quickly, and then that's just not saving time. The other questions that you can write down in the Q column next to that information would be questions that you have for your teacher that you want your teacher to go over the next day in class. So again, remember that asking questions of your notes is all part of the review process from the last slide. So the last step here in our note-taking process is to summarize everything that you've just learned into about a 3 to 4 sentence paragraph. You'll see on the template that there's a space at the bottom of the first page for you to put a summary. Please try to do this in your own words. This is another one of those examples of your brain getting the exposure, and technically, by the time you write your summary, this should be the 4th time you've really experienced this information, which will help you remember everything a whole lot better. So thank you for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing how this system helps you become stronger, not just in my class, but for your other classes as well.